Ja, Thomas.
Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us at Nordic Circus Hotspot's first seasonal event now in 2025.
Today we dive into a topic that touches on the core of our society, our climate goals and our common future, circular construction in the Nordics. And we ask, are we truly on the brink of a breakthrough?
With only 5 years left to reach the Nordic Council of Ministers' 2030 goals to become the most integrated and sustainable region in the world, we face some critical questions.
Are we ready to phase out the linear business models in construction? Can we become circular without halting development? And how radical must we actually act to get there? Today, we hope to get head above water, share several overviews, and set some clear next steps together.
So this is not just about material and methods. It's very much about the mindset, about daring to rethink how we build, how we demolish, and how we reuse and care for the materials and the built environment in the entire Nordic region.
Luckily, we are not alone at this. Today, we are joined by trailblazers, policymakers, and innovators who are pushing the boundaries of what's possible. From Stadsbygg and Umeå to startups and scale-ups in the Nordic Circular Construction Project.
We have invited one of the greater experts on the field, Julie Hobbs. We will listen to bruksspecialisten Carbonate Resirkla Neste, all working to make circularity not just feasible, but commercially viable.
We will also host a panel of sharp minds like Liv Öberg and Anders Fylling, exploring the role of policy, procurement, and transforming from the top down and bottom up.
So lean in, take the notes, listen on, ask bold questions. This is not only a conversation for today, but it's a call to action for the time ahead.
Okay, let's get started. Hold on. We are going to share the screen like that. And like that. Okay, go ahead.
So what we see when we start what we see here, we have been mapping all the reports that have been launched recently and lately, so it doesn't really lack on insights. But what we have been doing is what does it take from going from all these insight and skills to push us forwards. So what we see when we start watching the Nordics, not only from a report point of view, but from an action point of view, we do see what's still blocking the loop, what's holding us back. And we really learn, follow the money. It's often cheaper to waste than to reuse. It's a legal maze. We're facing a regulatory jungle, too many rules, too much variation, and circularity still enters the public code too late in most of the projects. We also face a data vacuum. You can't manage what you can't measure, so we lack detailed, harmonized data and waste flows and reuse potential. There's a behavioral drag. The industry is still wired for linear thinking, and this is how we always used to do things. It's a quite powerful barrier, and too many pilots, too little scale. And we will list to some of them today and see how to move this along. But we still see some hope in the tunnel, light in the tunnel, because where do we go from here? There's a deviating stakeholder map, so we work quite differently, but we do see that we might get ahead from here to a policy crunch, stronger and smarter regulations, end of waste criteria, clear reuse mandates, and of course we believe in harmonization across the Nordics. We know how much money talks, so we need really good financial incentives. Landfill taxes, CO2 pricing, lower VAT on circular materials, make the circular pay. Of course, we need to leave the linear and start the circular, so design out waste from day one. Early planning is key, and we know that digital tools and certification, this is about trust and transparency. So we see the passports, platforms, and standards to ensure traceability, reliable of reused material. And not to forget, make it all normal. We have tried to some kind of understand the deviating stakeholder map. And this is also the bridge when we try to look at this great, amazing Nordic region from above. We do believe it is possible to make a one harmonized Nordic direction, at least some clear processes. But we see that there is a deviating maturity, and where do the Nordic markets get aligned? We know that the outstanding country of Denmark is a regulatory front-runner. We can talk about circular construction where we stand. Denmark was the first country to introduce mandatory LCA and carbon limits. Still, Denmark is lagging on challenges with local implementation and upscaling beyond urban areas. If you look at Finland, it's a systemic thinking and design for assembly. Finland is really outstanding with its national circular economy program with 2035 targets explicitly including the construction sector. But the Finland laggers, it's a disconnect between policy and market adoption. Many solutions remain in R&D labs. Sweden is quite interesting to follow, so it's very innovation, market and business led. It's outstanding and quite strong ecosystem focused on product design, material tracking and digital solutions. We see municipalities like Umeå, we are going to meet later today, are leading on circular transformation, but the laggards of Sweden is fragmented also within Sweden. National governments is lacking regulatory pressure to accelerate system-wide change. When we looked at Norway, it might be a growing momentum within the public sector. So we would say that outstanding, our house Statsbygg are raising the bar with the requirements on reuse and documentations. We see also funding tools like Enova support several circular projects, but the lagging in Norway is no national minimum for circularity in buildings. Focus very much remains on waste, not on resource loops. And also very often inspiring to follow Iceland vision, emerging action needed. It's a national vision for sustainable construction, still very early stage. We have picked out one of the reports, and just to drop through it, what we do see now, we see some political and industry activism, and we also, so these are 9 quite strong demands from the market to its governments. It's published this year in Cirkulært Byggeri, From Thought to Action, and there is an urgent need to scale up the circular effort. And for the pace of the conversation, here are the arrow points, high degree on political Denmark. And this is also, when we picked out Denmark, we see this is happening here and there, and we'll bring this energy into the debate for what this brings to the seasonal event. Based on all these insights, we could pile up reports like this. It would probably go up to the roof. But what is really happening based on what we already know from all these reports? Ready to share?
Yes. There are so many concepts and ideas and suggestions in all these reports. It's hard to see what's going on. But we have been looking at different initiatives, and we come across 4 projects that are quite similar in its goal. Sorry. So the first thing I want to do is to show you 4 ongoing projects that actually takes a lot of the recommendations from these reports in the Nordics and tries to support the scaling up of circular businesses in the Nordics. So first of all, we have the projects that we're going to present a little bit more, Nordic Circular Construction, that we are organizing. Then we have a second one, which is organized by a group called Combien Pure. It's a Swedish and Finnish coalition of 34 companies who are exploring technical solutions in circular construction. They have a matchmaking program between innovative new companies and the more established companies to see what can we do about technical installations such as elevators, such as ventilation, and all the technical installations. And they actually have a series of meetings and workshops in the different capitals. And the next one is the 10th of April in Oslo, and then there is another one in May. And we recommend people to try to join and listen in, because it's really an interesting process where new ideas come up and established actors can connect with these ideas. Then we have a third project, which is called Circular Construction in Nordic Cities. It's run by Smart City Network. They have for years been trying out different topics around the smart city concept. But this year, and for a couple of years more, they will actually look at how they can upscale good experiences with circular solutions in the different cities. So they are in the process of selecting these projects. They will include their commercial actors and then take the experience they have, for instance, from Oslo, and demonstrate to the other cities that this was a solution that worked in our city. We recommend it for you as well. That's also a project that we hope to be able to connect to. And then there is a government track, a project that's been going on for 3 years in the Nordic Sustainable Construction Network. And they came up with a toolbook in December, very useful toolbook, summarizing the reflections on how governments must change the rules and regulations for us to become more circular in the construction sector. And they are planning a continuation, still waiting for funding, but that will go on for 4 more years, 3 more years if they get the funding in the near future. So it's interesting to see that we have 4 parallel projects very much related to the same topic, and that's why we are connecting with these to try to see what can we do together, how can we connect, how can we learn from each other. So, hold on, it jumps ahead. So I will say a few words about our Nordic Circular Construction project. This is a project which is started last year, and we're now about halfway. We are assuming several things in this project. The aim is to scale up circular solutions in the construction sector in the Nordics. That is, we try to support companies who are succeeding in one country to scale up to another Nordic country. So what this project is about is we are assuming that viable circular solutions exist. We need to scale them up. We don't need to innovate so much more. We need to scale them up to get the sustainability dividends of circularity. And also, we believe that it's a lower threshold for these companies to scale up in the Nordics, which are more similar markets than beyond. So it's a simple 4-step process where we identify the companies who are interested in trying to scale up their circular solution in the Nordics. Then we agree on a segment analysis, in what segment, in what country they want to explore opportunities. And then if this gives necessary insight, we develop strategies with them and eventually support implementation if we get to that point. And then we hope that they will become what we call Nordic market ready. And this project also has a communication path. This is part of it, this seminar. And we're on LinkedIn and website and everything. You can read more there. Yes. And the selection of companies is based on, you have to be ready to scale up in the Nordics. We want to have representatives from all chains of or segments of the value chain. We want to have representatives of the 7 layers of circular construction and also the 7 concepts. So we have chosen identify about 130 companies, and out of these we want 15 to 20 to participate in the project. And as you see, we are now 14 companies on board. Norway has the longest participation list, but we have several from Denmark and Sweden, and also Iceland and Finland is present, but there we still need to recruit some more. So we are very happy that we got this far. What we see is that all these companies really have tested circular solutions with a very big potential. They are truly circular, not just in the design, but also the way they are being used. You can change and use them after they have done their first usage. We have most key materials represented. We have most segments of the value chain and also most of the layers. So what this project also aims to do is to learn about the state of circular construction in the Nordics, and then to be able to get some insights and also try to influence governments on policy. So the insights so far, to be very brief, is we still see that the linear lock-in fuels market skepticism. You can have a brilliant solutions, but the very conservative construction business are saying, nah, it's better with my old solution. What we see is that it also takes more years for circular solutions to penetrate the market than more traditional products. What everyone is asking for is some willpower. Willpower from the decision makers, be it the architects, the builders, the entrepreneurs, the building owners. They need to take the step, take a chance, and try these things out. Otherwise, we won't get the circularity. Also, the politician must have much clearer, much more ambitious political goals and corresponding incentives. Because if you have a policy and you don't follow up, it's not really worth anything. And what we also see is that the Nordic market is far from harmonized. Catherine mentioned this. We need to get harmonization if we are going to use the Nordic region as a power region for circularity. So we need to have bolder moves on a general level. The governments need to prioritize renovation instead of new construction. We need to say we have to have a certain percentage of circularity in new buildings, circular materials. And we need to have the circular principles in all construction in society. So with this, I want to introduce 4 of the companies who are participating in this program. They will give you a brief insight into what they do and what they're trying to achieve and some of their challenges. We are going to start in Finland with a very innovative company called Carbonade. And this is actually one of the first things they produce. It's a piece of street stone which has been carbonized. So to explain how this is circular and how this works, we have invited in Jonne Hirvonen. Go ahead, Jonne.
Yes. Thank you, Jonne Hirvonen, Chief Operating Officer and co-founder of Carbonade, and we are a technology provider for the concrete industry and focusing on the precast concrete. And it's good to mention in the beginning that precast concrete is a big enabler for the low carbon concrete and circularity, because, for example, reusing of construction part is much easier with precasted products, and we are the best in Nordic countries for that. Our solution has been developed at the VTT Technical Research Center of Finland since 2019, and we have been now working as an independent company for plus 2 years and basically commercializing our technology. And now we are good to go for the markets outside Finland. We have 1 user in here already. And our solution is both utilization and storage of carbon dioxide. Usually people recognize us as a way to store CO2, but in fact, the usage and utilization of CO2 is the key thing for us, because we can save cement consumption in a concrete with our technology, which is our way to enter the markets, and then eventually, hopefully, when standards allow and our clients can go with the more changes, they can also pick some new binder instead of cement in their products and go very low in carbon in the future. But it's important to have a route to enter the markets, and that's why we picked the cement compatibility. And we see that this is very impactful use for captured carbon dioxide because you can basically double the benefits gained from it. So it's not only carbon removal or storage, but utilization to decarbonize construction. Do you have another slide in there?
Hold on.
Yes, and I wanted to give you 1 call for action there, and we see that the utilization already drives the change because cement pricing is going up. That's not that good news for the industry, of course, in a way, but that will drive the green transition in the construction sector quite much. So savings of cement might be a good business case for us in the beginning, but still there must be a stable way to valorize the negative emission we can generate in there. And this is sort of call for action for everyone in here, that let's use the potential of built environment to do it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jonne. We will get back to you on a brief debate afterwards on maybe some common challenges between the companies. So then we are going to turn to a Swedish company called Bruksspecialisten. They are experts in reusing tiles and renovation. And I'm going to let the CEO, Jakob Sten, tell us a little bit about it.
Hi, nice to be here. I tried to take control of the presentation. Is that okay? No?
Yeah, what happened?
Not really sure.
So now try.
We'll try.
You have the control.
Yeah, I don't see the small dots, but it's okay. You may help me, Jan. I'm Jakob Sten. I'm CEO of the Swedish company Bruksspecialisten. Thank you, Jan. We're a specialist in masonry and plaster construction, and we focus on the materials, bricks and plasters, so to say. We're located in the three biggest cities here in Sweden: Stockholm, Gothenburg, and Malmö. And we opened up reuse production of bricks in 2020. And that's also the year where we introduced a circular business model in the company. If you take the next slide there, Jan. Today we work in three different business areas to be sure that our materials are in the loop, so to say. So our biggest and most important area is to preserve and renovate the already built buildings with bricks and plastering systems. So we can help with the property owner to keep this building and prolong the lifespan, so to say. When you can't prolong the lifespan anymore, we have a reuse system to collect the demolition bricks and make them ready for another life in new projects again. And the last area is these circular products, where we have found and focused on the use of reused bricks and unburned clay as nice circular products to use in new projects. And if we take a look into one of those materials, if you make the next slide there, Jan. If you look at the reused brick as a circular product in a building system, our system here in Sweden is the first large-scale reuse production to recover demolition bricks, and it's a CE certified production. That's quite unique. Bricks are one of the few products that could have a CE certification level. And when you get the CE on the reused brick, it's a building product again, and that means that we can give guarantees and have an insurance company behind us, as a new produced material also could. Our capacity today is almost 3 million bricks per year, and we have a plan to double up in 2026. And the unique thing about our production today is that we are one of few that could cleanse these hard cement-based mortar from bricks. And we see that kind of brickworks with this hard cement-based mortar is common in Finland and Norway and also Denmark. So it's an interesting market to reach for us. If we look at the last slide here, we from these demolition bricks, we get different product areas. So today we have the facade brick, that is our most popular product, but we also make the brick slip that you could make into precast walls or glue on internal walls. And new for this year is the flooring system, where we cut the floor tiles from full bricks. That's an interesting way to scale up the demolition waste from bricks as well. So that's a short introduction from our side.
Thank you so much, Jakob. I think this technology to clean the bricks is one of the possible breakthroughs, because that's been one of the big challenges. But now we're going to look at another material, which is wood from old buildings. And with us, we have the CEO of the Danish company Neste, and he's going to tell us how they use wood from construction and give it new life. Go ahead,
Thank you.
Niels.
Thank you very much. My name is Niels Andersen. I'm trained as an architect and now CEO of Neste. We are 20 people in our production in Denmark. We produce sheds from waste materials. I think that this is not the first slide, but we could begin here. Yes, so in Denmark we have at least 100,000 tons of wood that should be and could be reused. So this is only like 1/4 of the total fraction of clean wood in Denmark. I believe that the numbers are really much higher in the rest of the Nordic, but these are the Danish numbers. And these materials are really high quality, and it should be reused. Old timber and also discharged wood from the factories. If you could change the slide again. So we unite those two waste streams and we build these sheds. And with sheds, we mean like unheated storage space, secondary buildings for waste handling or for bicycles and storage, among other things. And we found that in Denmark, we actually build yearly 500,000 square meters of sheds. And if we combine those two numbers, this number of sheds and also the volumes, it more or less adds up. So in essence, we could remove the problem with the waste wood in Denmark if we were to build all sheds from waste wood. We have certified our production with FSC, and we're also documenting the DGNB points that are commonly used in Denmark. And we have certified our company as a B Corp corporation. If you could take the last slide, Jan Thomas. I tried to sum up the challenges that we see, barriers for scaling. So first of all, we meet one problem, and that is the virgin materials that are presently not priced to the actual footprint. So that means that it's hard to compete with too cheap virgin materials, so to speak. We have a lack of regional circular value or resource chains in order to secure deliveries in scale. We have a present focus in the building industry in Denmark, and I'm sure in the rest of the Nordic, on initial costs rather than the total cost of ownership or product as a service solutions. And I would really urge us to also focus on this, because it kind of moves the customer to a different way of thinking when we start thinking about total cost of ownership. And it also moves us into a regime of quality thinking, lifetime thinking. We need more legislative changes in Denmark. We just are implementing now this rule of selective demolition, demanding the demolition companies to take out materials that can be reused and actually document that they're reused. But we need much more than that. We also need a differentiated quality documentation and more. Then we need some financing of systems for the shared risk across the sectors. Many of the circular projects in Denmark are kind of stopped with nobody knows who should take the risk, even though the risk is maybe not too big, then it's still a big issue. I think we need to set up a system to support this. And then we just finally need more knowledge and know-how sharing across the Nordics. And that's also why we're, of course, in this project. And I think these things would lead to a more, let's say, a system where we could scale these specialized industrial circular platforms across the Nordic countries. And this is what we see ourselves as in the future, a circular industrial platform for scale. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nils. We have now looked at 3 materials: concrete, wood, and bricks. And now we're going to listen to someone who works with all the materials. Resirkel is a Norwegian company, and we have the managing director with us, Lene. Tell us what you are doing.
Yes. Well, to start off with, construction and demolition waste accounts for more than a third of all waste in Europe. So it is an important area to focus on when trying to reduce both the amount of waste generated in the first place, but also when working towards putting materials and products into the circular system so that we can use them till they have actually reached their end of life stage. Today, we don't do that for most materials. There are not very good systems in place yet for identifying, handling, and documenting used construction materials. So this is what we in Resirkel want to change. And since founding the company back in 2013, we have seen a lot of positive changes here in Norway, but we still keep on going because there is a lot of work to do. In Resirkel, we work hands-on with reuse of construction materials. We work, for example, as consultants in projects. We map buildings for reuse, and we coordinate the whole process from mapping to actual putting the old material, the reused materials, into a new building. And through collaborations with our daughter company, Umbygg, which we see here in the picture, the big tent in the background, that's the storage place and sales area for used materials. We offer to also store and sell the used materials. So, but back to the basics. By reusing materials, we can save up to 80 to 95% of the CO2 emissions compared to using new materials. And we also obviously preserve nature because we don't have to extract raw materials. So this is like the very important backdrop. And we in Resirkel, we have had the pleasure to work as consultants with a wide range of projects and a wide range of clients. We have worked with ambitious clients who want to build something solely out of reused materials, or clients who want to certify their new build after the BREEAM system, or more locally after the what we call the future build criterias, or they want to work towards the EU taxonomy compliance. So we have also worked a lot with trying to impact and make a change on a political level. We have worked with manuals of how to both order a reuse mapping and also how to do it. And we have worked a lot with research projects to try to push reuse here in Norway. And we also offer now a course on how to do a reuse mapping of a building. So to sum up, reuse of construction materials, it is possible. And we are building the system step by step. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Lena. So we have a few minutes for discussion, and I think you come from different angles. And I wanted just to say, to ask you all, what is the most important barrier that you struggle with to increase your volume in the market? Let's start with Jakob. What is the barrier that really stops you from going to your full potential?
It's the I think the linear system is so well known, and the tradition to throw away fully functional building materials is it's hard to crack that tradition in the business. We have tried to introduce a way to buy demolition bricks from demolition sites to smoothen up the transaction and help the builders to earn some money when they send them for reuse instead of making waste. But it's still hard, even if they earn money to send the material and get some profit. It's still hard to bend the trend, so to say. So the tradition is one of the barriers, I think.
Yeah, so Nils, I know that you are working with demolition companies who are quite collaborative. They are quite interested in finding the right segments for you. So I was wondering if you could say a little bit about this collaboration and overcoming the obstacles.
Yeah, sure. We started the company 6 years ago, and we started working very closely with the demolition industry, and we found that they were really keen on finding ways that they could take part of this and also get a new business out of it. And the first years, we were really not sleeping well because we didn't know if we could get enough materials to follow with, our sales that we actually succeeded with quite fast. Maybe because it's just yet, so I think it's not too dangerous in the building industry. But I think it's been changing the last couple of years. We've had this legislation on selective demolition. So the big demolition companies and the waste industry is very much ready for this, and we are all waiting for the customers to really start buying circular solutions. So now I'm not sleepless over materials. Now I'm a little bit sleepless that I have to say no to all the materials coming in because we cannot sell enough. So that's really the problem right now. And I mean, circular solutions is needed, but what is also needed is quality and long-term solutions, and that usually means higher initial costs. And the problem in the building sector is that they primarily navigate towards low costs and not thinking about the total cost of ownership. And that's the main problem today, I think, and it's a huge barrier for sustainable building and circular solutions.
Yeah, this is something that we've seen in many circumstances, that people think that to recycle and reuse will be cheaper, but that's not true. So there are other values that you have to really emphasize. So Lene, I know that Recycle and Ombygg have been able to make a positive result from selling used material, and that's raising some eyebrows in other Nordic countries. Can you tell us a little bit about how you're succeeding in and earning money from selling used construction material?
I think it's a matter of getting the snowball rolling. It's a matter of in Norway we've had a big we've had what can I say companies, and also the state has gone in and tried to mobilize reuse. And we've had the collaboration with getting Ombygg up as a the actual tent that is the storage space is from Statsbygg, the stately owned. So they were able to, it's a long story which I won't get into now, but we've had kind of like it's a many different collaborators that have gone together as a start to get it up and running. But also I want to emphasize that it's a matter of getting the snowball running, because we always emphasize that to all the projects we work with. If you start in this project and you try to reuse some materials, then you'll get used to the way of doing it. You'll get used to the way of thinking, because I agree with what was said earlier here today, that they navigate from like tradition, they navigate from economy, so that it's a matter of like getting used to this new way of thinking, a new way of working. Yeah.
Thank you. We're getting a bunch of questions in here. That's great because people are really engaged. Before we turn to that, I'm just going to ask Janne on Carbonade. I mean, you are up against a very huge business, well-established linear ways of producing. What is your biggest challenge in getting the ball rolling for your product?
Well, this covers both our industry and all construction, so old habits. If you don't have to do something, most probably you won't do it. And then in our exact case, I would say that there are some solutions where you can cover that couple percentage need for green concrete with the alternative binders, expensive materials, etc. So our business flies in the bigger scale. So you have to adapt this to whole production or a majority of it. So getting things started is the biggest blocker, I would say. But I see the change coming to and especially the bigger enterprises in the concrete sector, they have quite heavy speed at this moment. So I see this in positive light, but old habits are very tight.
Okay, we have a question for you, Nils, from Hanne Wetland. And she's asking, if wood is taken from a rehab project or likewise, what's the best practice? What role do the waste companies play? You touched upon it earlier on, but what is it for them? What's in it for them? Are they earning money from this? And how far can they take this? Can they pick things apart and sort the quality on site?
The way we do it today is that we have transactions with the demolition companies, and they know from our quality schemes what they can take out from the buildings and how they can do it, and then they are being more and more efficient in doing that. And then we've been testing the cleaning of the wood. Does it happen on site or does it happen off site? We're not finished testing that because demolition sites are very what do you say, not similar. So I think we need a system set up to be very adaptable to the different demolition contexts. And we also need the business models to be adaptable to that. Right now, we're trying to scale this up, and that means that even smaller projects can turn in the wood if it's at a certain state and make a decent money on it. But it demands some efficiency in the dismantling. And then the cleaning happens externally. But it's a good question, and it's not something that is completely kind of a finished job. I think it will be an ongoing process, also collaborating even broader with the waste companies that have a huge intake of wood that could be reused as well.
Okay, we have a question for Jakob from Michael Townsend. How does your business model work in enabling commercially competitive reused bricks? How are you making this a positive income business, Jakob?
It's a large question. The reuse of bricks is maybe one of the most potent materials to reuse. It's in lifespan quality and when you use it as a material in facade again, it's as good as a new one. But the regulations for finding materials with a low climate impact is valuable at the market today. So we can of course have a price level that is a bit higher than the normal newly produced brick. So the way for us to earn money is to find a large scale production and automation. We need to be efficient. We need to to be able to locate and handle up to 3 million bricks per year. So it's a large scale production, and that's the key to find the way to earn money in the system, so to say. It's hard to find the profit if you just cleanse 50,000 bricks for a project. So you need to see the large scale system here, I think.
Okay, so we have a last question looking into the future from Fernanda. She's asking both Bruksspecialisten, Neste and Recircle. How do you think material passport can help your business? Have you any thoughts about this? Are you preparing for it?
Yeah, we've been. I can start. We've been fighting for declaration how bricks should be used, how you should design a brickwork that is ready for disassembling when you design it in first place. So we need to start to look into what kind of mortars and what kind of design is suitable for a circular system. And so that's one of the high priorities we see with the product passport. You need to see the product in a system that is ready to be reused. Because if we had that 50 years ago, our system, our production, our reuse production would be much more easy than it is today. It's hard to cleanse bricks from this cement-based hard sticking mortar. So that's one view of the passport discussion.
Exactly. I think our time has passed. We need to move on, but I want to thank you all for sharing what you're doing and what you're trying to do. All very admirable pioneers in each area. 4 out of the 14 that are presently part of our project. We're very proud of that. We're now going to move on to the next part, which is more looking at the broader lines and also the challenges coming from other places outside the Nordics. So I'm leaving this to my colleague, Kathy.
Oh, it's really inspiring to listen how going from reports to materials and see how to move it on. And now when we are having this time together, we'd love to look around and listen to those who are participants in the market. And I would now also welcome Gilly. Can you take down the slides so we can talk together, Gilly? I'm so proud to introduce you. It's only 2 months ago since we were actually deep diving. We were in Denmark joining the Denmark Circular Built Forum, and I can reveal it was a truly inspiring, engaging days. Hundreds of circular stakeholders from the built environment and Danish construction were together. It almost felt like circular economy is the new normal. It was there we met the first time, Gilly. You were one of the keynotes for the session, one of the days, and there were like multiple sessions during these days. And what you really provided us was a thorough, extremely detailed, I would say, looking into the future, but also showcasing how you connect the dots of regulatory, of standardization, of ISO, but you're pretty much of, I would say, activist for circularity. So your background, you're the co-founder of Reusefully. You have provided expert input to sustainability projects for 30 years in the built environment. And you've also been working across with the building products and circularity. I leave it to you to introduce yourself and really thank you for spending this time with us, how to awake the Nordic region and see what might lie ahead of us in the time to come.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, and for inviting me to present at this event. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Great. Right, I'm going to share my screen. I've got a presentation, so I'm going to look much more at the European context in terms of the key sort of regulations and standards and and hopefully sort of share a bit of information in terms of what might be coming up as well to look at in a bit more detail.
So I'll just listen you out, and when there's 1 minute left, I'll give you a short cue. Is that fine with you, Tilly?
Sorry?
I'll just give you a short note when there's 1 minute left. You've got the 10
Oh,
minutes.
yes, that's fine. Yes, thank you. Please do. Otherwise, I do tend to rabbit on a bit. Okay, so just checking everybody can see my screen, okay?
Very
So there's
fine.
a bit about reusefully. I think, as you said, we've sort of very much focused on circular economy in the built environment. And what's interesting, I suppose, is in the last few years, there's been a real escalation, particularly in the UK, in terms of looking at circular economy in relation to specific development projects. So we're working very much on development projects, particularly in terms of existing assets and how do you make the best use of those. But then just sort of moving on to the sort of European construction overview, I think you can see why it's considered to be so important as a sector. Here are just some of the statistics here in terms of the value to the EU and Europe, well, also in the UK. Many jobs, historically quite low productivity, low levels of innovation, though I would hazard to say that that's improving in recent years because of the various regulatory requirements being increased across the whole of Europe. And there's a huge amount of environmental impact associated with the construction sector, particularly in terms of extracted resources and also the amount of waste that's produced. So on an average, a third of all waste produced across Europe is from construction activities. In some countries like the UK, it's reaching like 50% of all waste that's being produced. So that's a key driver to to considering circularity within the built environment. Another key driver links to embodied carbon, so carbon emissions, and how do we use circularity to reduce carbon emissions, particularly whole life carbon emissions. And again, this is an area where there's a lot to play for in terms of circularity. So particularly if we can reduce the amount of materials we use and the new products we use, and if we can keep them in place longer, have more adaptable, longer lived assets, obviously that's good for whole life carbon, but also if we can extract products from the existing built environment and reuse them, then we can significantly reduce the upfront carbon of new development. So again, that's another big driver for circularity in the built environment. So I'm sure you're all aware of this. So 5 years ago, there was the Circular Economy Action Plan that was published for the EU. Again, linked to the fact that it is a key sector in terms of resource extraction, waste production, and carbon emissions. And then I've just highlighted some of the targets and objectives that were laid out 5 years ago, just to show that actually there has been quite a lot of progress in terms of taking forward the circularity at a regulatory level across the EU. So I'm going to go talk a little bit about the construction products regulation and also levels. What's also may not have hit the headlines yet is the fact there's a new Circular Economy Act that's planned for the latter part of 2026. This was announced in the Clean Industrial Deal. So there's going to be much more emphasis. Again, it's only scaling up. It's only going in one direction, and that is we really do need to accelerate circularity within the built environment. And then there's a target in the Green Industrial Deal to have 24% of materials circular by 2030. So what that means, circular, I mean, it's not really defined in terms of what the definition of circular, but that's very likely to involve greater levels of reuse, but also higher value recycling, so much less sort of downcycling that we're getting at the moment. And the updated construction product regulations, products regulation. So I'm sure you're aware this is like the harmonized rules for trading using products, manufacturing products across the EU. So it affects much more the EU because if you're supplying into the EU zone, then you also have to comply with these regulations. So they're updated last year. So some of the key things that are coming out of that are relevant to circularity and the digital product passports, and I'll go into that in a bit more detail in terms of standardization activities. Enhanced CE marking, so having much more performance data on all construction products in relating to their sustainability performance. And then here's a snapshot in the figure here, just shows some dates whereby there'll be mandatory declaration in terms of environmental reporting. No surprise, the starting point is going to be global warming potential, but then by 2030, there'll be a few more indicators that will be mandatory. So abiotic depletion may not be obvious, but that's resource depletion is one of those areas. And then by 2032, there'll be a whole bunch more of requirements in terms of declaration of environmental performance. So the UCPR, it will actually start to apply from January next year. And I think this is where there's a really important link to standards, because it can only really be enforced where there's a standard or a harmonized technical specification that can then be brought into place. So for example, the environmental indicators that are on this figure, many of those there was already a standard in terms of the EN 15804, so that's fine. But then there'll be many other areas where there'll need to be a standard developed or a technical specification to enable that to actually become mandatory via an implementing act. So this is a sort of link between the regulations and the development of standards. So another area is levels. So this is the Commission developed sustainability, I want a better word, like a sustainability standard for buildings. There are these 6 macro objectives, and the one that we particularly look at is the macro objective number 2, which relates to circularity, but also actually macro objective 5 is quite relevant because it's looking at the being able to adapt and be resilient. And then also quite relevant is the level 6, which is the basically whole life costing. So looking at the whole life costing and the various sort of risks and rewards across the whole life from a financial perspective. So the reason why I put this up is because levels is referenced in quite a lot of the various regulations and policy development, particularly in relation to green public procurement and sustainable finance. So this is an important, if you haven't looked at it already, it's quite an important standard to be aware of and understand the various indicators, but also how those indicators are measured, what are the methodologies behind measurement of those indicators. Another document that's also referenced in procurement and also the EU taxonomy is the guidance in relation to construction, demolition, waste management. So this was actually updated in August last year and now includes guidelines for pre-demolition and pre-renovation audits. And it's got some really good stuff in there. So if you haven't read that document, I would suggest having a look at it. So the work we were doing in the standards committees, we fed into the updating of this protocol. So it's not mandatory, this is a voluntary guidance, but it does become mandatory where it's obviously then linked into the procurement and taxonomy if that's being implemented. And then EU taxonomy, which I've referenced already. It's again quite a new document linked to sustainable financing. So there are sort of 3 areas that are relevant in terms of built environment. There's the construction of new buildings, there's renovation of existing buildings, and demolition and wrecking, which is quite an old-fashioned term actually, wrecking of buildings and other structures. So within there are these substantial contribution criteria. So the bullet points here are linked to the substantial contribution criteria for transition to circular economy for new building. So what's interesting here, obviously, it references levels, as we've just had a look at. It references the EU C&D Waste Management Protocol. but then it also sets some targets in terms of limiting the amount of primary raw material use. And it differs depending on what the actual material is. So the inert side of things, the concrete, the brick, and insulation, sort of maximum levels of 70%, and then going down to quite a low level in terms of metals. And that's not surprising because metals have a fairly high recycled content already. But then also, looking at the tools to be able to characterize and measure performance. So there's a big shift again, there's a big push towards digitalization of the information that we need to have in order to transition to the circular economy. So I haven't got much time, so I'm just going to whiz through some of the last few slides before I get my 1 minute, which is probably...
I'll give you 1 more minute to wrap it up, Gillian.
So,
Is that fine with you?
I think I can share this presentation afterwards. So there's some links here. So any of these projects, these research projects you're not aware of or you haven't looked at in any detail, this is just a snapshot. So there is a lot going on in terms of R&D. There's some very good information that's either available. So for example, the City Loops project or the FCRBE, where they've got material reuse toolkit. But then there are ones that are underway, so recreate the reuse of concrete. And then there's going to be a whole raft of other projects that are being developed. There was a recent call that closed in February that is looking at things like design for adaptability, reuse and deconstruction. So there'll be a whole suite of other projects developing from that. So I'm just going to finish really quickly on the standards. So there's a European Standards Committee, which is CEN/TC 350 SC1, Circular Economy in Construction. So we've now got some draft principles, draft documents that outlines the principles in terms of the scope and the objectives of moving towards circular economy in the construction sector. So they've established this whole principles of loops and different objectives and approaches within that. And I'm just going to leave it on the fact that there are now these working groups that are developing standards. So the one that's most advanced is relation to the framework principles and definitions. There's now a draft that's being circulated. So hopefully we'll have like the first standard published by the end of this year. Time will tell. And then more recently, there are these 5 working groups that have now been set up to look at these really important issues in relation to harmonisation and circularity. So the sort of data part of things, which is the working group 4. How do you assess circularity performance? Working group 5. How do you harmonise the approach to the reuse of construction products and materials? So that's working group 6. Designing for circularity at all these different levels, working group 7, and then working group 8 is looking at pre-demolition and pre-redevelopment audits and evaluation. So that's my sort of very fast canter through a European perspective. I don't know if there's time for questions. I'm happy to pick up any questions if there's time for it.
We will bring you into the panel and we are ready to receive questions. So thank you for bringing us through your year in circularity from that's where we met last time and really empower us for the time we have ahead. We will bring along with us now 2 dear guests, specialists. We will welcome Anders Fylling, Director of Sustainability and Special Disciplines at Stadsbygg. Stadsbygg is the largest public sector construction and property manager, overseeing more than 2.8 million square meters of buildings across the Norwegian country. Also welcoming now Liv Öberg. I've been admiring Liv for years and years, following what's really happening in the north of Sweden. She is Circular Economy Lead at Umeå Municipality, where she also plays a key role in the city's contribution to the EU mission for climate neutral and smart cities. So knowing that Umeå has been a front runner in circular cities and most of the cities contain construction and buildings, I think we have a beautiful panel of 3 specialists. So Anders, Liv, Anders, I would like to welcome you. Would you like to comment what we've been listening now the last hour?
I can start if it's okay. Thank you very much, Catherine, for inviting me to this event. What we have been listening to for the past hour has been very interesting examples of what's going on in the different Nordic countries on circular economy and on new methods and new possibilities. And what I've been most fascinated about in this last hour is that it's all the examples that you have are quite direct. It's these are business models that are actually working today in your businesses, and your view upon how the barriers look are very interesting to us, and this is things we need to work on in the coming years. So it's been very interesting, yes.
So far, how far do you relate yourself to circular maturity, as you are probably one of the biggest players on the demand side that can accelerate circular supply chain? What is like hot and what's hot in your world?
Yeah, I think we have to say that we're not very mature. We have worked towards circularity for the last, I don't know, Catherine, you know us, for the last 5 years, maybe 6 years. But it's been a very step-by-step journey, and we have identified the same barriers, or some of the same barriers that you have talked about earlier today, and also a few more. So what we see is that we are ready to implement quite a few circular business models into our methodology, and we see that when we try to do that, and when we do that, we meet some of the barriers, as for example towards the pricing of reuse materials, whereas it was commented that the pricing of virgin materials might be the problem that we meet here, right? But this is something that is a barrier towards or against a bigger impact of circularity so far. What we also see is that our main driver towards circularity as of today is to reduce, or our demands on reduced carbon emissions. So we have quite a good system for developing projects with low carbon emissions, and this is helpful for all circular concepts into our projects. So it's a bit on the positive side, and then there are some negatives, of course.
Thank you so much, Anders, for giving a short brief where your attention span is now. For those who join in now, we've been walking through the Nordic Circular Construction project, where we tap into what is market ready, or how to make market ready. What works in one market can scale to other Nordic markets. This is also where I say hi, Liv. I've been following you for almost 10 years with your cross-sector collaboration, and outstanding how the region of North Sweden, Umeå, is really paving way. Going from policy to lots of action in the circular fieldwork. Umeå is both community driven, and I would actually say ahead of the curve. Let's say hello to you, Liv. What is your takeouts from this session now, from where you are? And please share what is the circular city approach from your place where you are now.
Well, hello, everybody, and thank you so much for inviting me. I was really honored when I got the question from you. I've been listening to the whole conference and the different speakers, and it's really encouraging to see that there's so many companies and persons who's being engaged and driven and taking a place in the market, and I think that's extremely valuable. I've been working since nearly 5 years. I've had this position as circular economy lead at the city of Umeå, which actually is situated in the Arctic. We still have some snow. We don't have real spring yet. So we have a winter spring. What I take with me is that which has been my sort of mission for the whole time has been to mobilize and engage my local companies, or not my personal companies, but the companies who are represented and in the city of Umeå. I believe that this mobilizing, engaged or interested companies and business leaders, you are able to somehow move them a bit further on the circular transition. I think that's been my main mission, and that's what I've been striving for, you could say.
If there's one thing, what do you think the Nordic region could learn from Umeå's approach that would be relevant for driving change within this?
That's a very good question. I know that we are very highly ranked on trust. We trust each other. Perhaps an advantage we have being a smaller city is that it's closer to everybody, meaning that we are dependent on each other. And also a lot, I suppose, trusting people and just booking a lot of meetings. I think it's all about I'm not saying that anyone else is not doing this, but my main advice to everyone is just book a lot of meetings, talk to people, and then arrange meetings where you discuss, obstacles, possibilities, and then just keep on moving. I'm not sure if that's a really good advice. Seems like a really general advice, but trust in people perhaps would be my biggest advice. Yeah,
thank you. I will bridge this over to Gilly, because you really showed us how institutional and how instrumental the shift to circular economy is actually happening. You're pointing out the new EU Act, the law, which will hit next year. But what really Liv is showing us here are some of the human factors showing what do you think the element of trust and dependency might play for a faster shift to circularity.
I'm going to try not to be negative. I think obviously you do have to have trust, and you do have to have very good communication, because it is quite, complicated and disconnected supply chain, which doesn't help matters. And you quite often get different teams working on different jobs, so you sort of lose that continuity that you might get in other sectors. So I think that's one of the areas that makes construction quite unique, is you're creating a new product each time in a different place with a different team, which doesn't mean you can't transfer that knowledge, but it just makes it a bit harder to do, and it also makes it quite hard to get to have a consistent approach to actually implementing, because I think that's one of the things is we want to sort of move beyond just talking about it, and try to actually get some of this done. And that's where you hit the problems, I think, as referred to earlier. Once you actually move beyond nice reports with lovely objectives and infographics, so actually trying to do something different. So we call it, with there's business as usual, which is the linear economy. So you're trying to basically disrupt something that's been baked in for decades, quite often, and do something that's different from business as usual. And then you get all the issues about, well, what's in it for me? What are the risks? How do I cost up for those risks? So it's almost like, trust, I think, plays a part, but there's still a lot of risk aversity. So I suspect that comes down to lack of trust, actually. So we definitely need to have things in place to mitigate against that natural response that is, well, I haven't done this before. I don't know how much it's going to cost. I don't know what the risks are. Who's going to pay me to mitigate against those risks? Worst case scenario, it's going to cost this much. So who's going to pay for it? So I mean, down to cost of it. Yeah, risk and cost. And I think trust can only go so far in that. I think it's also about having the systems and methods in place and the tools in place to sort of help that transfer of information, for example, have a quality assurance.
Gilly, you walked us through all the regulations and institutional. I would say increasing the linear risk in construction is quite obvious. Still, if you look from now till 2030, it's almost the tomorrow. and you introduced the legal part here. We'll be talking about reporting and taxonomy, standardization, but here comes actually the Circular Economy Act, which is legally binding on and aiming for 25% reuse of materials just within 5 years. How can you please just elaborate a little bit how this could be an opportunity window, or how will this reduce the risk for circular stakeholders in the time to come?
But I mean, having a target doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be achieved. So there's a lot of detail that has to sit behind that. I mean, what we found in the UK is really, really effective at moving things forward is the link into planning, so planning requirements. So, and having this level playing field. So if you can, if two, if there be two submissions that are basically creating a development, one's going to be more expensive than the other because one's trying to, do the right thing and do things that are a bit more complicated than the bog standard business as usual thing, then I think that creates a problem. Whereas if through planning or through other regulatory means you can create more of a level playing field, then it's much more competitive because it says, well, okay, just as now, you have to adhere to certain health and safety requirements or energy performance requirements, it no longer becomes an issue in terms of, well, should we do it or not because it might be a bit more expensive or we're not sure how to do it. It then just has to be done. And obviously there's a fine balancing act between having those sort of requirements in place, but then also having sufficient time and resources and tools and guidance to then help everybody get to that level in that time frame. But I think once you start setting those minimum requirements, and then you can start to obviously increase it every few years, you can start to make it a bit tighter. I think that really drives change, and of what I've seen, it can actually spur a lot of innovation, a lot of collaboration. It can be done, but you have to have that really strong drive, and the regulatory or planning drive is quite critical for that.
Thank you, Tilly. How does this resonate with you, Anders? If you've got 5 years to really prove a transition, are there any highlights from what you hear here that resonates with you?
I think what Gilly said right now is very important, and it's one way to move forward, of course, to reinforce some regulations on the planning side to level the field. But the problem is, of course, that the will to do this is it's very political. It's a very political theme in Norway, at least. I think it is in the rest of the Nordics as well. So how far we will be able to use regulations to be a faster driver on this, I'm not quite sure. But it would be easier, of course, to implement solutions if it's given that you have to do it in the early stages. So this is one of the ways we have to, or I think we have to look at going forward. And we're also doing that. I think the Norwegian government is looking both on circular models and also on demand side for climate gas reductions, which will not cover everything, but will be a driving force as well. For our part, both doing the planning, the building, and the running of the buildings, we have the life cycle cost and the life cycle, both the cost side and the use side of the buildings. So we try to plan for low cost over the use phase as well. And I think that is one of the things that makes it possible for us to move a bit faster than maybe someone else. And also in the...
You were the one introducing for me several years ago that this, especially construction industry, is extremely loyal to regulations and requirements. So I'm now trying to, and I'm very sorry, Gilly, we have to make a 10-minute version
No
out of your 1 hour session we listened to. And what you really shared with us is how London, City of London, is going for retrofit first. We also met a movement of quite strong stakeholders going for zero build ahead. And we might see that we will be heavily regulated if we don't transition to circularity within a time frame. How do you, with growing voices calling for 80% reduction in new construction, you represent a public stakeholder, Anders. What will be the most radical element to actually evolve a circular best practice or a circular new normal in the construction industry?
Yeah, that's a big question, Catherine. I think one of the main things will be we have to reuse the existing building stock as it is to a much larger degree. So the total building to a much larger degree. And for us, in our planning, that will mean we have to develop these existing buildings to be good enough for the users, so they don't need new buildings. And this could mean the whole building. It could mean the main structures, or just maybe the area it stands on, so we don't have to dig a new ground or all the new groundwork. So I think mainly we have to use most of what is where it is, and then we have to include reused materials in both the new buildings and also in the existing buildings. And I think one of the big barriers that we are sort of touching upon is that the linear model, or the existing business models, they have to be challenged. So the contractors, right, they earn their money doing what they do best, and they're very good at it, but they have all their deals all along the value chain, and reuse of materials is sort of a bump in the road. So
I think you're tapping into very relevant on it. It's a quite engaged audience we got here. So we got the same question from Sari Nikkanen from Finland, tapping into what you're mentioning. And he says, at least in Finland, construction projects are quite heavily outsourced, leading to tiers of various outsourcing companies in the duration of construction chains. How do you see this from circularity perspective? Is this creating an additional challenge in promoting circularity in action? Please share your thoughts on this, Anders, and also Liv, if you have any experience on this one. So, Anders.
I can start. I think the long value chain that we work in makes it difficult to implement new ways to do things. But it's also an opportunity, because if you tap into the chain somewhere along the way there, then you can make big differences without sort of going to us as the building owner. You can tap into the contractors or the consultants or the architects and make the changes from there. It's not like it's not that we don't detail every reuse potential during a building project, even though we sort of own the project. So it's allowed to do even more circularity inside the project than what we have asked for. So I think to sort of make this work as a community where you don't have to lay all the driving force on the regulations or on the building owner, but you can do something in the value chain as well.
Yeah, I'll involve Liv now. In your last comment, you said, what can the Nordics learn from you? But I will turn it upside down, because you represent municipality, you work crossover sectors and industries. So what can you learn? How would you were really having I would say, a fantastic jump start with your OECD project of circular cities and regions. I wish many could get the same jump start, but how are you now ahead, and what could you bring to the contributors from the companies you've listened today? Well, what will it take to see them being present in your region in a short period of time?
Wow, that's a big question. But I think the whole thing is about to do things in new ways, whether it's how to procure contractors for buildings that the CDB is going to build, say it's elderly homes or schools. How do we view things, and how do we can we work on partnering where we gather different contractors and talk to them about circularity, for instance. I would say that my method has been to be doing things rather than to writing things. So I think the key is also in learning, from different stakeholders, from different companies. What are their needs? What do they need to take the step? At the same time, colleagues within municipality, what do they need in terms of taking the step into becoming circular? So it's about listening and learning, but part of my job is also to stimulate or foster a market with circular actors. So I know that there is at least one company that I've been trying to charm to come here to Umeå. I think it's also very necessary in terms of the value chains that the local companies wants to. It's also about relationships with businesses. So new companies being a good a competitor in the local market, challenging norms, challenging the ways we do things, I think would be really interesting. But I hope that all companies who are interested in circular construction would come to Umeå, and
Oh, that's quite a lovely invitation, Liv. And I would say still very linear is time. So we're really getting straight into our time schedule. But I really echo you, less writing. Even if we have so many wonderful reports now, we know what to do, much more action, and see what actually will be the built best practices of tomorrow. And now the last word from one of you: what will it actually take to harmonize Nordic that might, from your point of view? You first, very shortly.
Well, yeah, I think there is harmonisation activity going on. So I'd say just get involved in it, get involved in the standardisation work that's happening. Everyone is welcome.
Getting involved, that's the bridge to you, Anders. What will be your...
I think I'll have to lean on the same as Julie. We have to get involved and do things like this as well, have sessions together and talk about the issues at hand.
Excellent, thank you. And your last words, you've already given us an invitation, and what will be happening from North Sweden? What is
I would say I agree, to listen and to learn and to do things together, and to lean in on where the work is going on and listen to the good examples. Thank you.
Thank you, it's beautiful. And then we're about to wrap up, but the purpose of this session is not to end here. This will be a starting point from where we can work ahead from this Wednesday in March. So I leave the summary to you, Jan Thomas. You've been listening out.
Yeah, well, what my main impression is that we have so many new rules and regulations. There are lots of companies and lots of politicians and bureaucrats who are struggling to understand this. So there has to be a lot of training, a lot of information around this. Another thing which I have both experienced and listened here is that if you ask a politician what the ambition should be, they will refer to a report with not very clear ambitions, or they will say the companies are not ready for very ambitious goals, or the other way around. The companies say the politicians have to set the goals. So there is this chicken and hen thing that we may want to challenge, because we see in all these reports, I mean, we've gone through 40, 50 reports on circular construction in the Nordics, and we see that there is a very clear pattern on what the different recommendations are. So we are planning to promote a joint Nordic ambition on circularity in construction. And basically, it's not ready yet. We will bring it in our community and discuss it. But of course, first of all, we need harmonization across the countries. The Nordics, it shouldn't be impossible for one company to go from one Nordic country to another and having to learn all the rules and regulations and the tricks of the trade all over again. I think we have to set very clear goals of how much of our new housing and new buildings should be renovations and not new constructions. In Denmark, they are saying 80% of all housing needs should be covered by existing buildings. There are lots of ideas there. Then we need, as Denmark has, to have clear limits on CO2 emissions per meter square constructed. That would really drive the contractors in trying to find solutions. And then in Norway, we have a wonderful law that says you should map the waste, but it says nothing about how to use it. So we need to move beyond that and say you have to use it, not just for some energy purpose or to fill in a road, but you need to keep it at the same level or even take it higher. Then we have to get into the public procurement in the Nordics an ambition for circularity in all new constructions, be it 20%, 30%. Gilly in Denmark was showing us an example of a British company who says 40%. So there are possibilities, and there was a proposal in the Norwegian Parliament, just 2-3% was turned down. So we need that. And then, of course, we need to phase out the overcapacity in the waste to energy sector, which is outcompeting a lot of the companies working, for instance, on wood. And of course, we need material flow analysis and insights so that we can really understand what comes in and what goes out. And of course, everyone talks about funding, but now money is tight. But I really think we need a joint, huge Nordic fund to kickstart or take upscale circularity across the borders, because each country seems to be a little bit too small for these new actors. The market is not mature enough. It may be bigger along the way, but we need to be able to tap into the markets and have support in that. So that's actually my summary, that we need to have bolder politicians, harmonized and joint goal agenda, and we have the solutions. We need to scale them up, and we have the rules. We need to understand them and then combine this to really reach the Nordic goals within 2030 to be the most sustainable and integrated region in the world. That's the ambition. And of course, we have climate and biodiversity goals as well that we need to reach. And we cannot reach it if we don't go circular in the construction sector.
Thank you. You're really inviting us for quite a manifest agreement. These are the last words from Nordic Circular Hotspot on this seasonal event. We really appreciate all the contributions and remind that these processes and projects are ongoing. So if there are any topics, please reach out to either for the partnerships within Nordic Hotspot or within the construction program. So these will be the final words from our side. Thank you all for joining this seasonal event.
Thank you and goodbye.